It's been a while since we've been to the Crystal Bridge here in downtown Oklahoma City. And if you're not familiar with the Crystal Bridge, it's a spectacular giant glass tube that houses some of the most diverse plant material in this part of the United States. You'll see everything from cacti and succulents, an arid portion on one side, going down to a subtropical and tropical, all under the same facility. It really is very impressive. Now, we're here today, though, to see a special display that has a lot to do with some of our themes this year, and that is of tropical gardening. Well, to find out about one of the breathtaking displays that's going on now in the Myriad Gardens, I have the manager of the Myriad Gardens, Mr. Allan Storjahann. Allan, welcome to Oklahoma Gardening.
Thank you, Steve.
Now, tell us about the display. I guess it's called Fuchsia Fascination. That's a tongue twister too, isn't it?
Well, it is a fascinating display. People that look at fuchsias when they go to the garden centers and nurseries around in Oklahoma are fascinated with what they see. And we chose to put these on display this spring to help people appreciate them, learn how to grow them, and have a good time observing them here in the Crystal Bridge. This is kind of their favorite environment.
Well, I tell you, the thing that I have always appreciated about fuchsias is a brilliant color. I mean, it's just one of the most breathtaking colors of a flower that's around. But if people start looking at them, there's a little bit of differences in the flowers, and I'm going to have you show us that. But tell us about the history of them first of all.
Well, fuchsia originally came from the East Andes Mountains. They live up in what's called the cloud forest, very humid, and the temperatures are uniform year-round. And they were discovered in the early 1700s by a missionary who lived in Santo Domingo, and he was the one that first described the plant. Now, they spent a lot of time bringing them back to Europe. They became a collector's item throughout the 1800s. The Victorian age, when all the plants were being hybridized and collected, was when they were heavily developed. And then all the way up to World War I, they were primarily in Europe. But the United States, we had some hybridizers get a hold of them, and now most of the plants that you see on the market today are developed in the United States.
So we're kind of putting an American touch on them, I guess, a little bit. Show us about some of the colors and flower shapes, Allan.
Okay, well, we have Miss California, which is a hybrid. That is a great example of a single flowered fuchsia. It has 4 petals. They look like more. The petals are the parts right here, and these are the sepals. It's a simple, dangling flower. And I might mention that these plants are all pollinated in the wild by hummingbirds. And that makes it very easy for them to be pollinated. The bird can hover right by the flower and pollinate it as it's taking nectar from it. And the fact that they're dangling here helps keep the pollen dry, and it really is a great facet.
Now this is quite a contrast, I guess, from the single, isn't it?
That's true. This is a hybrid which shows many more petals inside of it. It's a double. It has 8 petals, and there are some intermediate forms where we have between 5 and 6 and 7 petals, and those are called semi-double.
This is one here, but it's also a smaller flower.
Much smaller. The Dollar Princess Fuchsia is very dainty, small and delicate, and it's a very nice one for growing inside because it has all these flowers, a very nice profusion of blooms.
Now, what kind of colors are we going to see? I mean, here we've seen some deep reds and purples. There's a little bit more of a range in that, isn't there?
There sure is. There are whites, there are red and whites, every combination of pink and purple and red and white.
Salmon,
very nice.
Just about anything you can imagine. Now, these are what we traditionally see in the hanging baskets, but I understand there's a little bit different variation in the ground bed here. Tell us about that one.
Exactly. There are some shrub and tree forms of fuchsia, and in the rainforest, fuchsia can be found actually growing up as an epiphyte in the tops of the trees. This one down here is a shrub form. It's a very nice one. It's called the Meistergartner Bonfeld, and it's a very pretty bloomer, almost an orangey red color, and it can be planted outside in Oklahoma and used as a summer color plant in a partially shaded area.
So we can put it in the ground, or would you leave it in a container?
I would plant it directly into the ground.
Okay.
And it does okay as a basket, but because it doesn't droop as much, it doesn't cover up your basket.
Okay. Well, now, this is just one example of a display that changes out here throughout the year. What else is coming up that we might look forward to?
Well, inside the Crystal Bridge, we change our displays at least 4 times a year, Steve. We have a display coming up during the month of May that will be all begonias. And then during the Festival of the Arts, which is the 3rd week of April, we'll have all kinds of pretty things in here, including some tropical birds for people to come in and see. This summer will be a cacti and succulent display, and this fall we'll have orchids in the Crystal Bridge. The Christmas display is after that, and we look forward to next spring when we're going to have topiary in the Crystal Bridge.
So that's one thing that people need to know. They can come at any time and see something different.
That's right. They sure can.
And one thing that we're proud of too is you're now one of our Oklahoma Botanical Gardens and Arboretum's affiliate gardens. So that's a new change since the last time we were here too. So we're now. How long will this display be up for people to see?
This display will be here until June. It'll be in combination with the begonias through the month of May.
Okay.
As it gets hotter, the fuchsias don't like it as much outside or anywhere actually, and I want to mention that they do better in the spring and fall in our gardens in Oklahoma, but we'll have a lot more begonias planted and hung in here throughout June.
Well, Allan, thanks very much, and now I'm going to give them some more pointers on how to maybe upgrade these to bigger baskets and get them to survive these Oklahoma conditions.
Great idea.
But I think we need to encourage people to stop by because it's a beautiful plant to see, and thank you for having us out.
Steve,
we appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Okay. Since fuchsias are tropical plants, they're going to need a little bit of special attention to get them through the long summers here in Oklahoma. Now, obviously, when you start out and purchase a plant, they're going to look like this, very nice color. And as Allan mentioned, they really do best in early spring and also in the fall. So during the summertime, they're going to kind of decline on you. And this is one that's actually gotten pretty aggressive. It's becoming woodier. And so we're going to try to show you what you would do during the summertime. Now, notice that the blooms are always put on the very ends, on the new growth. So it's going to kind of be like grapes in a way. The longer it gets, the more blooms you'll get on the outside. So you're going to need to cut it back. But again, it doesn't like our hot summer. So one thing that I would encourage you to do is trim it back. Now, you can take cuttings off of these real easy. They're easy to propagate in the spring. But this is what I'm going to salvage from this plant. Now again, lots of cuttings, but I want to use a root ball here too, and it's very root bound, and you can see how root bound it is and how it's dried out a little bit. But we'll pot that in the basket. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about some of these new baskets. Actually, you'll see hanging baskets with fuchsias and various plants in what we call the wire baskets. Now, traditionally, they've been wire baskets with a synthetic insert in them, but there's some new things coming out on the market, and this one is by Color Gardening Incorporated. And we've shown you before some of the coconut core that's used now in the blocks that you add water, it swells up, and it's kind of a substitute for peat moss. Well, this is also recycled coconut core. That's the liner here. And it's porous. It allows a lot of drainage, obviously, with good oxygen and keeping it moist. Hanging baskets would love this kind of thing. And you can pull it apart on the sides and plant on the side if you'd like to. Also, an interesting one from Appleseed Wool Corporation is actually wool, sheep wool, and it's used as a mat, or you can purchase one called Woolly Bloomers that also would work as an insert here. And this one, the nice thing about it too is it has nitrogen, some potassium, sulfur, other trace elements, so if you're using it as a mulch outside on the ground, or in here it's going to give you some slow release nitrogen and nutrients. And it is biodegradable, and they'll tell us it'll last from 1 to 2 seasons depending on how you use it. So when you're out shopping, look for some of these neat things because you get several benefits with it. And it may be new to the area, so you may have to request your garden centers to start carrying it. But again, the first thing you do is you get really good potting soil, something that's real loose, that's going to drain well, and at the same time hold moisture. Now traditionally, I would encourage you to moisten this liner first of all. And that way you'll have moisture on it, kind of like you do peat moss. But then we'll loosen up the root ball a little bit, and you can pull away some of the old soil or use it right in the new one, depending on any problems. Now, really, the main thing is the heat on these particular plants. They will get aphids from time to time, some spider mites, some of the traditional indoor pest problems, but also there's a botrytis rot that will get on them, and that's from overwatering. So they need good drainage, but again, they have to be moist. So once you get it potted up like this, water it in real good, tap it down so you can get some of the air out of it. And then I would just try to keep that as cool as you possibly can during the summertime under a shade tree where it gets indirect light, keep it moist, but it needs cool weather. Then when the fall comes, hang it back outside again, start fertilizing it. You'll get a lot of new growth. You'll get blooms going into the fall. And one thing about hanging baskets, you can take them inside if you're going to get any freeze problems, and then bring them back outside on the sunny day. Then during the winter, these kind of work like geraniums. Just pull back on the watering, stop fertilizing, put them in the garage or someplace where you can keep them 40 degrees where they don't freeze, and they'll be woody again, and just overwinter them in a dormant period. And then next spring, start in fertilizing, watering, repot again if you need to. And sometimes you can get fuchsias to last 2 to 3 years with the care that you give them. And if you're like a lot of us and getting cabin fever, I'd sure encourage you to come back to the Crystal Bridge here in downtown Oklahoma City, because the vibrant colors and the smells and the green is really helping us get in the gardening mood. So be sure and stop by Crystal Bridge.